Ani Nindawe Magadaduk, hello my relatives. Benesikwe Indigenicas, Makwando Deum, Gababani Ka, Gishkani Ganing, and Dunjaba, Miigwech. Thank you very much for the honor of being here with you today, and honor being here at this conference. My partner Don and I were, as I said last night, oh, my feather is flying. Go get it. Bring it back to me, please. Thank you. This came from one of my nephews. He is no longer with us. But we really felt good. You know, like I said, we've been in the middle of a big pipeline battle. We had 4 years, we defeated this pipeline known as the Sandpiper, which was a fracked oil pipeline coming out of North Dakota. And the day we defeated that, August 2nd of 2016, the Enbridge Corporation, largest pipeline company in North America, announced that it had purchased 38% of the Dakota Access Pipeline. And so that is how we ended up in North Dakota. And I tell you that story because I will talk a bit about it, but today I'm mostly going to talk about things I would rather do, which is the next economy, right? But we are in the midst of a Line 3 battle, which is on the largest tar sands pipeline Enbridge proposes to put through the heart of our territory, same corridor, 915,000 barrels a day. And so it is really refreshing to come to a place and to share, you know, I must share the story of our battle, but I must more share with you the story of how much joy I get to be here with you and to be in this place where it is about promise, it is about the future, it is about people who care and love our land and love our earth and love our seeds. So thank you again for the honor of being here with you. As I reflected on what I was going to say, I'm going to start by, you know, just thinking about this moment and again, thanking the indigenous people of this land. And, you know, you almost think the same. I come someplace and I say, I bet those native people like this pretty good too. You know what I'm saying? Like, you do not see native people in this territory because it is so expensive to live here. But I bet that the people who lived here love this land as well. So let us all take care of the land upon which we are, and recognize and allow those people into every space and help them to return with their prayers and their ceremonies, because I am pretty darn sure that those people here who do the earth renewal dances and ceremonies throughout California are some of the reason that we continue to live, because some people kept their covenant with the Creator. And I honor those people and do my best, as you do, to restore our covenant with the Creator, our deal that we have for living here. This month in our language is the end of what's called Gishimanitugisis, which is the Great Spirit Moon. In Ojibwe territory, the month is followed by a month which is Namebinigisis, the sucker moon, which is when the sucker fish move under the ice and we often harvest them. Then Onabanagisis is the month which follows, known as March, hard-crusted snow moon. And in that moon, we know that it freezes and thaws and freezes again. And that is why we call it that. But it's also known as the moon you don't want to do a face plant in the snow. Don't go sledding hard, that moon. Is Kigamizigigisis, our maple syruping moon, follows that. And many of you may come from territories or remember the land where syrup flows March and April, although with climate change it has flowed this week in northern Minnesota. And we have missed the first run, which we are kind of frustrated with, but who would know that the first run would come in January, except for climate change. You know, and so we must be prepared as people who are observant to what is upon us and what is around us. We must be watching our relatives to see what is happening. Then we come to a month which is called Wabaganagisis, or the flower moon in May. Then we have Odaminigisis, the strawberry moon, Meangisis, the blueberry moon. We have a month which comes around August, known as Manominikegisis, or the wild rice making moon. When we as Anishinaabe take to our lakes and rivers, reaffirm our relationship, put out our tobacco, and go to harvest that which the Creator gave us, the wild rice, our sacred Manomin, our wild rice. The moon that follows that is called Watibagagisis, which means when the leaves change color, sometime around September in our territory. Then the moon that follows that, Binakweogisis, when the leaves fall. It's always funny coming to California because I am never sure when things happen. And I come here, I was like, I don't know. It is all going on at different times here. But that is our moon, you know, because we have very clear seasons in our territory. Although I personally think there are more than 4 seasons in the north. I think that there is also thawing and freezing up. And those are two seasons that should be recognized, because that is a time of great change in our territory, and we all look. And there are many, many implications of that, whether you are pruning trees or whether you're putting aside your crops or you're trying to travel on ice in the North Country, which is what we do at this time of year. We go on our lakes. We cross our lakes. And then we have a moon after Gashkano Gizis, which is Manitou Gizisoons, which is the little spirit moon. Those are the moons in the Anishinaabe calendar. I thought I would share them with you because you, if any people that I speak to, will remember and know those moons because they are based on that natural world, that which happens around us. And that, you know, when naturally the strawberries would come to our territory, or naturally when the blueberries would be throughout the boundary waters or our northern territory. I don't know if you noticed that aside from that those months are named after the land which we live upon, but also the gifts that are given to us. But did you notice that none of those moons are named after a Roman emperor? Did y'all get that? I just want to point that out because it's really, really, I just want everybody to remember that it is possible to have a worldview that has nothing to do with empire. Nothing to do with empire. And now would be a good time to not only remember that, but to begin that process of how we let that stuff go, because those bags are way too heavy to carry. They are way too heavy to carry. And so it is important to me that we remember that, and we move in that way. So this is Steve Primo is an artist from my territory. This piece is called The Gift. And, you know, I might have done it with women, like if it was me, you know, but the idea is still the same. The idea is that these seeds are a gift from generation to generation, from spirit to spirit. And that is part of the work that you do that is so beautiful, and I'm thankful for it. But I wanted to share with you some of that. And now I want to talk about making America great again. So I got a few ideas on that. I bet you all do too. But this is my idea of when America was great was when there was tremendous agrobiodiversity, right? 8,000 species of corn. That's pretty good. We're not like, you know, sloughing and couch potatoing it here. We're busy making all these corn varieties, you know, of great variety. And everyone here knows, like, corn did not exist in nature. It existed only as teosinte. And as indigenous people, particularly indigenous women, as seed selectors and seed, you know, we developed all those varieties. And women are really, really good at seed saving and seed collecting, because we're not only usually the ones who harvest, but we are also the ones who cook, and we are also the ones who store. And so everyone here knows that some of them don't work out so good. They don't taste so good. I had like a couple squash got together this year, which was a big mistake. You know, and you know, so we know which ones should be saved and which ones keep and which ones do not. And everyone here also knows that you know, indigenous farmers, and a lot of you come from indigenous farmers because we are all indigenous to some place, but we are the people who made this tremendous agrobiodiversity. Nobody at Monsanto, nobody at Syngenta did any of that. But that knowledge and those gifts that were given from generation to generation, you know, that is what it is our responsibility and our opportunity to preserve. And I think about corn, and, you know, also as such a gift because it shows that humans are cool. You know, I think about that because I bet a lot of you go through the same thing some days. I'm like, humans are really just not good. You know what I'm saying? I mean, I know y'all go through it. I'm like, man, we're just a horrible mess, you know? And then we do something really beautiful, and I'm like, oh yes, we are beautiful, aren't we? And then we do things like corn, because corn did not come out of nature. It was a partnership or a relationship between humans and the plant. That is how all those varieties were created. And so I reaffirm, I think corn reaffirms our status as peoples, you know, as peoples who can do the right thing. Tremendous agrobiodiversity. Tremendous biodiversity. That's when America was great, when there were 50 million buffalo. America was great when there were 50 million buffalo, the single largest migratory herd in the world. And that migratory herd thundered the plains through territories to the north and to the south. And in that migration, they traveled and they were upon 250 different species of grass in the northern plains and in the Great Plains. Some of those species of grass had 8 feet of root system in them, and that is how, in fact, the topsoil was created, was this, you know, these grass diversity and the buffalo. So to me, that is when America was great. And I think about that because a few years ago, you guys are a smart bunch, so you know these guys, Frank and Deborah Popper. They were some demographers from Rutgers University, and they went out to the Dakotas and they looked at the farm management plans and looked at the number of farms in foreclosure and the age of the population in North Dakota and South Dakota, which is probably about 60 for an average farmer out there, because y'all are out here. You didn't move home, frankly. I'm just going to say that, you know what I'm saying? This is like, y'all got that. You know, California is great, but North Dakota could use some real organic farmers, frankly. Let's just say that, you know. It would help my lot a lot if some of you would move home with your relatives and straighten them up. We refer to North Dakota as the Deep North for a set of reasons, which became quite obvious during Standing Rock. And some of that has to do with how we restore our relationship. But when the demographers, the poppers came out there, they saw that farms were in decline, people had moved. They called it frontier status, that a lot of the counties had returned to frontier status in North Dakota. And so when they came out, they said, you know what y'all should do out there in the northern plains is you should just pull them fences. You should pull them fences and return it to buffalo. Because in the same territory where there were once 50 million buffalo, there are today 28 million cattle. And those cattle are all going to Nebraska feedlots, and all those cattle require an immense fossil fuel economy and an immense amount of CAFO systems. And it is not sustainable. And everybody knows that a cow will run from a blizzard, but a buffalo will walk into it. And that is how, when the great blizzards came and the great storms came, when there were 100,000 cattle that were killed in South Dakota and North Dakota a few years ago in a freak storm, not a buffalo died. Not a buffalo died. And so I think about that, because as we think about where we are going, I'm saying you're going to have to, we need to think big. We need to think ecosystem scale. We need to think how we are going to return our relatives to their place. And as I look at things like the Buffalo Treaty that was signed by a number of indigenous nations, the Canadian government, I look at those territories, which was the creation of not only spots where there were herds, but corridors where buffalo could move in the northern prairies in Montana into Alberta. I think that is what vision is. That is what vision is regional, bio-regional changes in ecosystems, and that is the work that you do. And so I'm pleased to be here with you. Well, that's when America was great. America was great when there was billions of passenger pigeons. Pretty sure we ain't getting them back. But there's a lot of things we can. And that is part of our sacred responsibility, is to bring back things that were not like lost. They were stolen. They were stolen. Colonialism, agribusiness, corporations, you know, none of this loss of agrobiodiversity or biodiversity was like Darwin, right? It wasn't just like the survival of the fittest. It was a set of policies that denied all of those plants and all of those relatives their rights to exist. And everybody here knows that that goes on still today. Whether it is a salmon in a river, you know, whether it is a salmon in the river in the north of California, or any species that today is facing, whether it is climate change or death by fracking. You know, it is battles over public policy. So that is about making America great again. And that's our vision of it. A little bit different than the screaming guy with orange hair to the east. So let me tell you a little story about my territory. This is where I live, Gawawi-Egamug, Round Lake. I live on the White Earth Reservation. I've lived there since I got out of college, which was a long time ago, and I want to give a shout out to Beth Craig in the back, my college roommate. Hey, Beth, yeah. Organic farmer here in California. Always happy to see my sister. Always happy to see my sister from back in the day. But this is where I live, you know, and I live in a land that, you know, I got good place here. You know, we got food that grows on the water. We got wild rice. We got sugar that comes from a tree. And you can still drink the water in my territory. You can still drink the water in my territory from a lake. Now that would be worth fighting for, would it not? So that is where I live, and that is where I stand with my community. But I'm, you know, blessed to be there. Let me tell you a little bit about our Monoman and that which is in our territory. You know, it is, where there are Anishinaabe, there is Monoman, and that is the northern part of five American states and the southern part of 4 Canadian provinces is the remaining territory of the wild rice, our territory. And it is spoken about our battle. We have fought long to protect our wild rice. First from the commercial buyers, you know, who would come in and be predatory, buy rice for 50 cents a pound from a native person and sell it for $5 to $10 a pound at the market. So we fought in the 80s against that. we began a process of building a value-added processing on our reservation and marketing our rice ourselves. That is something that you are all familiar with, these strategies to not have your work or your gifts stolen by corporations or by buyers. And then we fought hard against the marketing campaigns. We sued Anheuser-Busch, who had, it's called Onamia wild rice, with 2 Indians in a canoe on their label from Anheuser-Busch, wild rice grown in California. We don't call the rice you grow out here wild rice, we call that tame rice. You know what I'm saying? You know, I like them guys, Lundberg, they're cool dudes. They're cool, but I'm saying it's tame rice, and we need to do a little bit of work on what is the representation of it, because it does not taste like a lake. It tastes like a patty. That's different, right? So we fought on the labeling, but we did not win the labeling entirely. We won in Minnesota that labeling is required. But you can still drive the entire California wild rice crop through the loophole that exists. So I'm saying that, and you guys are people of conscience, but over time we should be talking about fair trade wild rice and rice that comes from 2 Indians in a canoe, you know, with some sticks on some lakes where we have fought for many years to keep our rice, to keep our lakes, and now to fight off the pipeline companies. We are still pipeline-free wild rice. That was us. But this is a little bit more than that story, you know, and we did defeat the genetic engineering in the state of Minnesota proposal at the University of Minnesota to do genetic engineering of wild rice, and we defeated that in 2007. But what I want to say more about our sacred monomen is that our rice is emblematic of the spiritual relationship between a people and a food. These are 2 of our sacred beings here. This is Nana Bourgeau and Nokomis, 2 of our sacred beings, half spirit, half human beings who are within our rice fields and our rice territory. And this is what our rice looks like. This is me and Dawn Goodwin, one of my heroes. She and I fought sister to sister, with sister standing by each other against the Enbridge pipelines. And this is Big Rice Lake, and that is what rice looks like. You know, it is immense. It is immense, our lake's full of rice. It looks, you know, it looks like a pasture or something, doesn't it? You know, but the entire lake is covered with rice, and that is where Enbridge wishes to throw their pipeline, and that is not going to happen. That's not going to happen. But this is our sacred responsibility, and you know, it is our most sacred food, the first food eaten and the last food. It is served at our feasts. It is served at all our ceremonies because of our relationship and the gift that the Creator gave us with our wild rice. And I tell you this because you understand the sacredness of food and the sacredness of relationship. This is, that has been eroded. This is kind of the choice between 2 worlds moment. And I feel like that, you know, what we are about is the process of ensuring that what we believe is retained and is kept. But this is an artist named Votan who did this work. This is what colonialism looks like when it destroys your food system. You know, and we all have, y'all understood this, basically, but this was not, you know, this isn't a freak thing, this is a military policy. This is a scorched earth policy used on a worldwide scale, and this is, I think, Fort Kearny, and this is the buffalo skulls from the Great Buffalo Kills. You know, and that's what I'm saying is like we fully understand what has happened to our territory, and we fully understand. And this, you know, for those of you who came to Standing Rock or understood, this is an additional part of that struggle. This is a signing of the dams. They were said to be for the farmers in North Dakota and South Dakota, the Pick-Sloan Diversion Project or the Garrison Diversion Project. And every farmer here knows, everyone here knows that you do not need to destroy ecosystems to water your crops. We need to know how to grow our food so that it does not destroy an entire ecosystem. That set of dam projects flooded out the Mandan, Hidatsa, and Arikara people, the people that had, you know, historically the greatest agrobiodiversity. And we refer to really the Missouri River Valley as kind of the fertile crescent of the North Country. Tremendous wealth of varieties that were grown along that territory. And this dam flooded out our best lands, flooded out Standing Rock, leaving them about 75% of their trees were gone and 95% of their animals that had lived along in the biodiversity of the rivers. Every other community was faced with the same. And so I say that because, you know, you are familiar, and as you look at the Shasta Dam rising in Northern California, you see the potential to obliterate a people obliterate a people, the Winnemem-Wintu, and their history. And so it is not something that is only historic. It is something that is present. The destruction of a people and a way of life, and the destruction of everything that has lived upon that river. But this, when we went to Standing Rock, that river that is there is down from these dams, and there are dams on both sides of where we battled at Standing Rock, And so, that which occurred this last round in that battle over the pipeline was a long, long history of the not only, just the destruction and genocide of our people. And as it continued, this is Will's seed catalog. I believe that they were recently purchased by Syngenta. But the theft of our agrobiodiversity and our seeds, so on the right, I guess it's on the right here, you could see Mandan women in their corn varieties. And then you could see the seed catalog, which was initially was a pretty cool thing. It was all good until Syngenta bought it, probably. But this is what existed before. This is what existed before in this tremendous agrobiodiversity that was this territory. I'm just going to tell a little side story, which is so you hung out with me for a few minutes here, and I was at your conference. So I went to the Northern Plains Sustainable Agriculture Conference here, about 10 years ago or 8 years ago. I forget what it was. I was looking for some seeds, So I go in, and I'm crashing the conference, I'm crashing, and it's hard to crash when you're a person of color, a sustainable ag conference. Did y'all notice that before? Yeah, they're like, who are you? And I was like, well, I just came, but I was tracking down this guy named Steve Swinger, is his name. And I don't know if any of you know him, but he grows for Seed Savers, right? A lot of those guys, but he's growing these corn varieties that he got from the Mandans. And so I go to this conference because I'm tracking down, I'm super persistent, and I'm going to go in there and I'm going to find these guys who are growing these varieties and see if I can grow them, right? But I don't got all the money to go to the conference, so I really just came to see Steve, right? So they finally let me in because I think I was like, come on, guys, you got to let me in this conference. I promise I won't go to any workshops. I promise I'll just go find Steve, So anyway, I'm good to my word. So I go find this guy, Steve Swinger. He's he works for a university, I think he works for the university as Carrington Research Station. And he says, he's so happy I came to find him. He grows a Dakota White Flint variety. And he said to me, he started crying. He started crying, and he said, Winona, I interviewed him for a long time. He said, the saddest thing in my life. I said, I'm thinking I don't even know you, buddy. I have no idea what the saddest thing is in your life. And he says, the saddest thing in my life is that I was not born a Mandan woman. He said, if I was a Mandan woman, I could sing Mandan women's songs to my corn. He said, but I cannot sing those songs. Isn't that the greatest? I was like, oh, buddy, So I think about that and the goodness of people's hearts. And, I think some Mandan women did go sing for him a few times. So he probably felt a little better. But I think about that. And I wanted to say that because that is this historic relationship. And this is how that relationship is interrupted, where seeds become property. And, we all know this story. And we are all rankling against it because seeds have a life unto themselves, and they have a right to exist without being the private property of of a corporation. And this battle, it continues. This is this is how even in the agriculture industry, and even to some extent in the industry that we are all in today. Let us be careful. Because I was visiting my mother in Ashland, Oregon, which is, of course, the marijuana producing capital. When I was a kid, I used to smoke, and there was this guy, the DEA officer, I have to tell this story, the DEA officer for Jackson County, his name was Howard Hemp Hill. I was like, you think that guy had any credibility whatsoever? We were like, no, Howard. No. Back in the 70s, I think they got a new guy with a new name, but now it's all legal and everything. But I was like, man, that was so crazy. But anyway, so I was going there and I saw that, and I also saw that obviously the marijuana industry should not, these industries should not be the same. I feel like do not make your plants into slaves. Do not, I like that I met that guy from the kind guy today, be kind to your plants, whether it is, we do not want everything eclipsed by cannabis. And I see that even in my own valley that I was raised in. You know, I see the pear orchards, and I see the, you know, then the vineyards, and then the small farms, and nobody can afford to keep the guys because the trimmers pay more money, you know. And everybody here knows that we need to eat. We can't just all be high, you know. So, we got to eat, right? So let's work that out together. All right. So this is art from my territory, and this is called, the guy's name is Ray Thomas. He has passed away way too young. That's what happens in my territory, way too young. But he, Ray Thomas, this is Ojibwe-style art, or Anishinaabe-style art, and I always like to show it. It's like this X-ray vision. There's inside the beings, and then there's like a lot of lines that connect these beings. And I always put this out because Beth remembers this, but if you wanted to study the art from Europe, you went to the Fine Arts Department at Harvard. But if you wanted to study indigenous art, you went to anthropology. And so I say that to y'all because basically, you know, that is a value assessment of whose knowledge is important and whose knowledge is valid and whose art is valid. And, you know, to me, this moment, this piece of art is called We Are All in the Same Boat. You know, and that is true. And it is really important to me that we understand that we will learn from different people and different cultures and different gifts. And we have to take our gifts and we must work together. And to make sure that there is space for Indigenous people in this movement is very important to me. You know, I am grateful, as I said, to be here, but to remember that you know, we must all learn to sing to our seeds. We must all learn to sing to our seeds. But also some of those ceremonies and some of those things that are so old, they come from our communities. And so I tell you a couple more stories about our people and our seeds. Isn't that cool looking? That is called, Pawnee eagle corn, right? See why, huh? Like that, very awesome, you know? So I tracked down in my little tracking down the seed story, right? And I think I actually started with Gary Nabhan, my good friend Gary Nabhan's book there. I was reading his book, and he had that section on the Mandanhidats and Arikara and going up there. And so I'm visiting with this woman. I heard this story. Her name is Deb EcoHawk. And a long time ago, the Pawnee lived in the Mandan territory where I showed you that beautiful bluffs on the Missouri River. And they were then they were the Arikara people. And for some reason, they split. They split off as two different peoples. But in their creation story, as Arikara and before that, and as Pawnee people, in their creation story, the man descended from heaven wrapped in a buffalo robe, and the woman descended from heaven in a corn husk. And that is the depth of a connection that a people have to their seeds and to their understanding of their place in the universe, the gratitude of descending from that. And so they split up, and the Pawnees went to Nebraska, where they lived for a time. They brought their seeds, they brought their songs, they brought their ceremonies, and they lived in Nebraska. And as the settlers came in, it is said by the Pawnee people that they got along well with the settlers. And I want to say that because it is possible to have a good relationship. It's possible to have a good relationship. And she said, you know, Deb EcoHawk is who told me this story, and she said, yeah, we were kind of like AAA. Their horse was lame, they'd come see us and get another horse, you know? Or if women would share, you know, births, we would share, you know, share that which we knew. And so, you know, I think about that. And then the federal government came and forced the removal of the Pawnee, 3 separate removals at gunpoint. And their neighbors did not like that, but, you know, they did not stop that either. And those Pawnees were forced to Oklahoma, and many of those Pawnees perished on their long walk to Oklahoma. And when they got there, they had so much grief, as all of our people have. We have so much grief and so much trauma in our history. Many of us have from whatever culture. But they had so much grief because they had lost their land. They had lost their relatives. They had lost their ones had passed along the way that they, you know, had no way to go back and take home. They had lost so much, and then they finally had the greatest grief because they could not grow their seeds. They would not grow in Oklahoma. And so they tried, and each year their seeds in their sacred bundles would dwindle, the number that they had. And finally they put them aside. They put them aside. And one day this woman named Ronnie O'Brien from a museum in Kearney, Nebraska, I forget the name, it like goes over the highway, Highway 40 in Kearney, Nebraska, called up the Pawnees and said, you know, we'd really like to grow some of your seeds in your traditional homeland. And they said, who should we talk to? And so they, you know, the Pawnee Elders Culture Committee gathered, and I did visit with them, and they said, I don't know, you know, we don't really have much seeds left. And then they said, you know, let us try this. We'll send our seeds back to our homeland. And so they sent their seeds back to their homeland. And Ronnie O'Brien and some of the farmers in the Kearney, Nebraska area grew out their seeds, and the seeds flourished. The seeds flourished. And what Ronnie told me was that the seeds remembered, what Deb told me is that the seeds remembered the land they came from. The seeds remembered the land they came from, and I really liked that story. And so a relationship continued, and Honor the Earth was able to send some of the, some youth back to live, with the museum and with the farmers, and some of the land was returned. And a few years ago, they had Welcome Home Pawnee Days in Kearney, Nebraska, and 150 Pawnee came in on some buses from Oklahoma, and 8,000 people came out to be with them. So to me, this is a story of a number of things. Seeds and corn, they give us this chance at redemption. To me, it is a story of redemption, where you can fix something up, in some way and have something that is great return. And that is part of the gift that we all have in the work that we do. We are able to bring things back. It is a story also of promise. So that is the story of this Pawnee eagle corn. This is my friend. He is deceased now. He passed a few months ago. His name is Jerry Kononui. And he is a kalo farmer or a taro farmer on the Big Island. And I was summoned out there to help them a number of years ago. I was summoned out because we had a successful campaign to defeat the genetic engineering of our wild rice. And the Hawaiians said, will you come join us, because we are battling the genetic engineering of our taro or our kalo. So we went out there to see those guys, and to me, I learned so much being with them. I went to a lot of their meetings, and I have a long relationship in Ohana out there. And they were talking about how where they come from in the first, in the birth between the sky and the water. The first was born. The first was born was a stillborn. The stillborn was named Kalo, and that was taro. And that is the older brother of the Hawaiian. The second born was Kane, or the Hawaiian. And that is the Hawaiian origin story. And so in their origin story, Kalo or taro is their older brother. And that is why they did not want their genealogy genetically engineered. They have this relationship that is so deep and so strong. And when the scientists came to see Jerry Kononui, I always tease him. I say, you look like a Hawaiian Care Bear. Doesn't he? He's like just so cute, Anyway, he knows I said that about him. Rest in peace, brother. He said, I said, this guy came from the university, like big PhD guy, and been studying taro, and it's like, as white men often do, talked on and on and on about his accomplishments. And, he's hanging there with the Hawaiians, and they're like, okay, good guy. And then anyway, so then he asked Jerry Kononui in his kalo field, like how long he'd been working on this. And he said, 150, 250 years. And what he said is, because my ancestors, this same field, we know all these varieties. He said, and what he told the university is that which all of you know, which is the answer is in the biodiversity, not in the genetic engineering of the crop. If you want to have crop security, you must have wide biodiversity, agrobiodiversity in your field. And that is how your fields will survive. And this just short story, we also grow potato varieties in our territory. We grow, on our little farm, we grow our farms. We have different land, but we grow potatoes, corn varieties, and we grow these cool potatoes too, and a lot of you probably grow these cool, I just think the purple potatoes are like the coolest potatoes in the world myself. But I like this story because the Maoris were faced with the genetic engineering of this variety that they had grown for a long time. And the university in Auckland or something want to do it. And, I would not want to mess with the Maoris, They're like super badass people, right? They scare me. I'm like, you be on my side, I won't be against you guys, Just watch the All Blacks a couple times and you're like, yeah. Anyway, so they came up and they wanted to genetically engineer it. And so there was a battle that was Maori. The Maori in the end, I did believe, win, but it was over this potato. And I thought it was so interesting that the name of the potato was Peru Peru, and it had, after they DNA tested it, the highest rate of Andean genetics of any potato in the Pacific. How interesting is that, huh? And that was, of course, BC, before Cook, right? Because those Maoris were cruising over there, you know what I'm saying, Easter Island, all that territory, get those potatoes, come home, right? So I think about that, because plants unite us, and we have learned so much, and I know you are all super appreciative of the things that we gave, you know, cuisine. I mean, you know, without whether it is tomato, avocado, potato, right, you know, chocolatl, all Nahuatl words, right? Y'all know that, right? Northern Mexico, Nahuatl words for those varieties. I mean, what would cuisine be without all of those? The potato, the tomato, avocado, my personal favorite out of my ecosystem. And then, of course, chocolate, right? Food are these gifts. Let us take care of them. And this is what a sustainable economy looks like. I don't know if you can look at it, but it's super funny in this. There's this USDA lentil bag that came from it's the USAID program, and I have no idea why a lentil bag from USAID ended up at my wild rice landing on Big Rice Lake. Like, so this guy has some story that one day when I have a little more time I track down. But anyway, oh, how'd that move? But that was 10,000 years on the same lake. Not bad, eh? 10,000 years harvesting on the same lake. That's what a sustainable economy looks like. And this is the next generation. This is me attempting to teach 6th graders how to braid corn. So let us talk about the next economy. In our teachings, this is referred to as the time of the 7th fire. And in the time of the 7th fire, we were told that we would have, as Anishinaabe people, our prophets came to us a long time ago, and they said we would have a choice between two paths. And they said one mikana or path would be well worn, but it would be scorched. And the other path, they said, would not be well worn, and it would be green. And it would be our choice upon which path to embark. And that's what our prophets told us and referred to this time as, is the time of the 7th fire. And that is the time that we are in, and it is our moment. It is our great spiritual opportunity to be the people that stop them from genetically engineering the world's food supply. It is our great spiritual opportunity to be the people that stop them from using fracking water on our agriculture, right? We're the people who have the spiritual opportunity to keep the planet from combusting to oblivion. And everybody in here knows that California has a good shot at doing all of this, because you guys are what, like the 14th largest economy in the world or something, right? Oh, that's right. So y'all should, you know, y'all gotta be strong and tough in California. We're counting on you as we watch the absurdity of national politics. I'm like, come on, California, just say no, you know, just say no, right? Counting on you. So let us be those people, and let us be strong. So I'm going to talk a little bit about, you know, what that means and where our work is and what that looks like. This is a squash that we grew. This is one of my nephews holding a really cool mandan squash that was grown. And, you know, as we think of where we are in this moment, I have to like read from my book because I forgot to find my little thing. The tremendous agrobiodiversity that we exist. You know, as this Pat Mooney, he had this really interesting quote. He said, "In my generation, we have lost more knowledge than we have gained," which I think was super interesting. It's about the loss of agrobiodiversity and the loss of seeds, because with each thing that is lost is so significant, everything that is contained within. You know, and so we need to be the people that are about the process, of course, of recovering that. You know, we used to have, we're down to about 135 major crops, and you know, originally we had 7,000 crops and 1 million varieties. And they say that we are down to about 135 major crops and 103,000 varieties. Not so good. Keep it up, keep breeding. I like the brown cotton lady, that was pretty cool. You go, girl, you go. Get all that cool stuff back. I'm gonna get all that cool stuff back. And those varieties, everybody knows that those varieties are very high in a lot of nutritional value, and that a lot of these varieties, not only are they grown by indigenous people and farmers, but the fact is that the $13 trillion Monsanto, Syngenta craft food economy does not produce the majority of the world's food. 70% of the world's food is produced by people like you and me. You know, we are small farmers. We are on our land. We are in, you know, countries everywhere. And the question is how we keep people on land, right? How we keep people on land, how we ensure that land is returned to people, and how we take care and preserve that land, because the future will not be fed by Monsanto. The future will be fed by us, you know, and that's what we know. So this is, you know, our struggles for food sovereignty, and you know, there's a lot of talk. I didn't go to permaculture workshops, but basically, you know, I don't want to say anything, but I just want to say, look, like we have permaculture, indigenous permaculture, you know, and I think you all kind of know that. But every once in a while, someone says, "We're going to come teach you some permaculture." I was like, well, you know, shit, we already had that permaculture thing. We just didn't call it permaculture, you know. We just called it how we lived, right? You know. Right? Pretty much. So this is like how we live, you know? And in our territory, you know, we have a huge harvesting economy, and a lot of that harvesting economy is based on the premise of permaculture. As you take care and you make sure all your berries are going to be there, right? You know, you take care of your forest, you burn your forests. You burn your territories to make sure the things that need to be there are there. And that is landscape-wide practice in our territory. We don't practice it in a garden, we practice it in a landscape. You know, a few years ago, I did some good work on Anishinaabe agriculture history, super interested interviewing these people, but, you know, burning in the spring across the board. And another thing we did that's super cool is we used to, and we still do some, but I'm gonna work on this year, maybe I still could do that. We grow our food on islands in our many lakes. And y'all know why we probably did that, right? Give me one shout out. What do you think we did that for? Water. One more thing. Predators, right. Smart people. Don't build $1 million home on island. Put your garden there, right? I mean, if you want to like have an easier time. So this is a little of our work in my community. I talked a little bit about the Pawnee Eagle corn. These are some of our corns that we grow. I've been growing for about 20 years, maybe 25 years, I forget. My father came to see me one time while I was an undergraduate at Harvard. His name was Sun Bear, Vincent LaDuke. And he was, you know, 8th grade education, super smart man. And he came to see me and he said, Winona, I don't want to hear your philosophy if you can't grow corn. There you go, my big Harvard degree, but could I grow corn, right? And you know, corn teaches you. Your plants teach you. You know, and that's part of what he was saying. Is like, also, like, talk's cheap. How are you gonna eat? You know, I was raised in a family that understood that one day we would not be going to the store. And what I understand in my territory is that the store-bought food kills you. In my territory, a third of our people have diabetes. Store-bought food. That's not from traditional food. That's store-bought food. So our work is in restoring food for ourselves. I haven't figured out how to really make a profit at this, but first I want to feed my community, and then we sell our surplus. The most we have most is our rice, but this is our corn varieties, Bear Island, Flint, grow on Bear Island. Never had a crop failure with my Bear Island Flint. First time I grew it, I thought I kind of failed. It was about this tall. I was like, oh my dad, be so mad. You know, I grew it was this tall, and then I realized it didn't have to be tall. It just had to put on an ear, right? And it was short because that made it like easier. It was frost resistant and it was drought resistant. And when the big storms came through and blew over Monsanto's varieties, mine stood. So this is corn for climate change. This is corn for climate change. These are Flint varieties. That is, they're for hominy or pasoli. When prepared with ashes, they have twice the protein and half the calories, rock the B vitamins. That's what you want. That's what you want. And so as we think of what we are going to grow to feed our people, you know, this is what we grow as this Bear Island Flint. This one in the middle, pink lady corn, I'm actually trying to get more of my pink seeds back, but I grew that, and my friend Sue Wicca grew it, and people say, why you grow pink corn? And they said, why don't you grow blue corn? I said, no, why don't you grow blue corn? You know, if there's 8,000 varieties, you could grow whatever color you want, right? So I'm gonna grow pink corn because I like pink. So anyway, I'm working on getting my pink corn crop back because the seeds kind of went visiting and I didn't get them all back. But anyway, this is when I went to see my friend Frank Kutka. He works for USDA. He's super funny. Can you imagine being like the sustainable farming guy who works for USDA in North Dakota? He says it's kind of like being a knife-wielding Muslim. That's what he said. Walking into some of those USDA meetings, they're like, Frank. So he said, that's what he said. But anyway, this is his corn. See how short it is? Right, that's the point. North Dakota, you don't need tall corn. You need it to be short, so it'll hang out, right? And this is my Vanna White pose. Vanna White, Manitoba white Flint in the house. My cousin said, no, you got to pose. I said, damn it, man. But anyway, I just want to show you, we're serious corn growers, super proud of this harvest, and you know, it's a really proud for our territory. This is our squash varieties. And you know, this one here is there's a Ricora squash here, and then the other one here on the right we call Gete Okosaman. A lot of stories about that. The story I was told when I was given the seeds is that it came from a archaeological digging near Green Bay, Wisconsin, and that it was you know, found inside a clay vessel, and they bust open that vessel and they found these seeds. They carbon date that about 800 years old. And so someone gave me those seeds with that story, and then some like super smart guy was like, no, that's not the right story. The right story is that they were 1,000 years old. I was like, okay, whatever. You know, I mean, you know how, so I was like, but you know, I like my story a little better. But anyway, you know, but it may be, I don't know what that is. But then they say, what's it called? You know, because I talk to people all the time. They say, what's that called, Winona? And I said, I don't know what that's called. And they said, well, what's that squash called you got? And I said, oh, shoot. So I says like, okay, white guys name stuff all the time. I'm gonna name this one. Right, you know how white guys are always busy naming stuff? You ever notice that? Like stars, streets, everything gotta be named by some white guy. My God, you guys, give it up. Give it up. Anyway, so this way here, right? Y'all know what I'm saying, right? You know, gotta claim it, put your name on it. But anyway, so I call this one Gete Okosaman, which means really cool old squash. That's what I grow. And I grow this every year. You know, just like but you know, the coolest thing about it is, as you all know, is like when you have something that you bring back, very, you know, not well known, has about 1,000 seeds in it. Someone counted one time. I'm like, that is possibility, right? I mean, that's the thing about this. These plants are all about, I will be here, and all of my descendants will be here, right? And that's why I love the squash. It's like so much possibility. But I see it now. People send me these pictures, you know, here I grew it this year, and it's like kind of like seeing your lost great-grandchildren or something, right? When they send you the pictures of them and their cool squash. So super proud of my part in that. This is kind of the return of our systems here. This is our Medewan Society, still going in my community. I'm a member of our Medewan Society. 1906 on my reservation. This is a dam buried this, but this is a picture of Manitou Rapids in what's known as Ontario, of our Medewan Society, our drum. Same picture, but that's about 5,000 years old. I come from some old religion, right? I just want to point that out, like pre-Christian stuff, that's us. But anyway, my point was that they came out with all these like greenhouses and stuff, and we saw we want one. And I said, well, let's just adapt it. So then they just make this, you know, and so you guys would all do this too, but we didn't have the money for the USDA hothouse and stuff. So they started making like wigwams with this on it. So this is from Red Cliff Reservation. This is our food economy. I'm working on that. And you know, part of what I just want to say to y'all is I feel like that they took the political system. You know, I know that guy did not actually win the popular vote. I'm fully aware of that. But you know, we was not really paying a lot of attention when some of this happened, and we was all infighting, and we was all saying, no, you know, I don't like Hillary, and you know, I got it because I was in the same, you know, I watch these things, I participate, but at the same time, they didn't take the economic system. They didn't take the economic system. And like Trump with his little fairy dust, think he can make all kind of things happen with his little like, I do this. And you know, his stuff is not gonna work out. But we gotta keep up our economic strategies, which is what you're all doing. You know, we're building the next economy, which that's the economy I wanna be part of, the next economy. And so in my community, this is a snapshot of a lot of other places. We did a study, you know, of our food economy, and we realized that 86% of our food economy is purchased at Food Service of America, Sodexo, brought in on trucks or at Walmart. You know, and that's a huge drain on a tribal people that are already in poverty. And so that is why we relocalize our food economies. And that is where our work is in my community of rebuilding our local food economy, ensuring we are able to harvest forever on our lakes, and ensuring that if we have maple syrup that is in surplus or wild rice in surplus, we sell that and get a good price for that which we do. But then the more and more we do is, you know, is rebuild this. And so that is a lot of the work that we are doing in our community, which is a snapshot of a lot of other communities. How do you quit hemorrhaging? Because every time these jokers come in and say, we're going to give you some new jobs, you know, let's say as we bring jobs and employment, I'm like, in my reservation, you bring in jobs or you bring in something like that, we're still hemorrhaging. We're hemorrhaging our economy. We spend a quarter of our money on food, goes off reservation. We spend a quarter of our money on energy, goes off reservation. So our work in my community is really the relocalization, a lot of food, energy, health, same thing as other communities. But it's like their jobs mean nothing if your economy is structurally hemorrhaging. And so that is the important work that you are all doing in your own communities and in sharing, is in rebuilding these local economies. So this is a little bit of our work at home, which is kind of a microcosm. This is a crazy picture, but the Red Lake, I'm just putting this out there for you. So I'm interested in rebuilding soil. Y'all are too, right? And so Red Lake Reservation to the north of me has a commercial walleye fishery. And the commercial walleye fishery has about 700,000 pounds of catch on their lakes that they control 100% of, right? And of that, they have about 400,000 pounds of waste, right? Which I got a lot of problems with that. And some of it is like, there's a fish I'm showing these kids in my village. I'm like, look at this fish that was in their waste, right? So I don't want to air all that laundry, but I want to say that there's some super wasteful practices that are out there. And so right now, Red Lake is selling their fish guts to mink farmers to feed mink that are in cages to make fur coats for people, right? Y'all get how unethical that whole thing is, right? Y'all got how egregious that crime is at some level, right? And so I'm really interested in building a fish emulsion factory to turn all that stuff into fish that I could put on my soil, right? So some of you guys here, those kind of people, contact us at some point, because we've been working on it. We did some plans for it, but we need some help to move this from where it is, to where it needs to be. But this is what the fish looks like. This is dram. This is dram, and other guys that do fish emulsion. I was like, I can't call this corporate spying, but I was like, how'd you guys do that? So I go hang out with these German guys, super handy family, and they're doing this dram fish fertilizer thing. But this is me right now. And this is so I take boxes or 50-gallon barrels of fish guts and dig them into my soil. Now that is super fun, but that is not really efficient. Y'all got that, right? I am definitely the personification of the little red hen. Let me just do it myself. But half of you are the little red hen too, right? I'm just gonna do it myself. Okay. So I'm gonna do it myself. Here I am, I got this fish guts in. Okay, but the question is I do that in my fields, but we need to ramp it into a regional scale, right? Which is what you're all doing, and I want to do it in our territory in northern Minnesota, the land of all the lakes and land of all the Ojibways, with 7 big reservations and a lot of agricultural potential. But to me, I come a place like this and I just get inspired. I got way too many seed catalogs already, I'm gonna go home and now I need 4 greenhouses, Everything is going like that. But this is think big. It's like my friend Wes Jackson. Y'all know Wes Jackson. And one of my favorite quotes from Wes is he said, if you're planning on finishing something in your lifetime, you're not thinking big enough. Right? Right? Seeds are like that. Seeds are like that. So this is my preferred farming method with Rosie and Ondag, right? That soil need a lot of work. But we got some decent soil up there, but I'm interested in post-petroleum or reduced petroleum agriculture. And I think everybody here gets that, because we're slathering it on our food, right? Whether it is in the pesticides or in the transport. I'd like you guys to keep your food here, and I'd like to produce my own. Except for I'd like some avocados when I fly out, right? But y'all understand, right? It's the relocalization and how we decouple, petroleum and agriculture. And that must be essential to our work because, and some of it will be horses. Some guy was telling me about his little, I think Peter, I don't remember, was telling me about the oxen motion, thing. I don't think I could do the oxen thing. But, this is me. And we got a lot of cool ideas we could do there. And then this is my fabulous hemp project. Isn't that great? We look so stoned. We are totally not stoned. I was like, how did you get that picture of me? I look stoned. Oh God. But I'm interested in the next economy. I've spent 5 years fighting an oil pipeline, and as I said last night, I spent most of my life fighting really stupid infrastructure projects. You know, for a country with a D in infrastructure, I'd like it to have an A in infrastructure, and it shouldn't be in oil pipelines, right? It should be an infrastructure that makes sense. You know, one of the happiest moments I had this last week or a couple weeks ago is I'm going to a tribal hearing, and I'm going in there, and on the way I see these truckload after truckload of pipes, you know, pipes from the Sandpiper, which is the pipeline we defeated, the fracked oil pipeline, and I see these pipes, and what I was seeing is pipes leaving. Pipes leaving. You understand how significant that was to me? That's how you know you won, when they are hauling their damn pipes out and you're like, don't let the door hit you your ass on the way out, buddy, right? You see what I'm saying? So I'm really tired of their economy, and I want the next economy. And so the next economy is going to be with a lot of organic food. And that's what you guys are going to do. Us all are going to do that together, because we know that if you want to sequester carbon, you put it in your soil, because that's where it belongs, not in the air. And you only do that through restoring agriculture to being organic and to restoring ecosystems. And so keep it up. Like, let us keep moving ahead. Let us build an economy that is not based on clothing that comes from, you know, whether it is the cotton with too much water or too much pesticides, or whether it is all that crazy stuff that I'm probably wearing, you know, that came from a fossil fuel at one point. Toxic stuff. We're like dressed in toxics, right? That's why I decided, so I'm working on this hemp project, because I'm interested in the next economy, part of which is hemp, as a part of an integrated system. And so I'm interested in fiber hemp, because I would like to change the clothing economy. And that is like, of course, everybody's like, why you pick that? That's so hard. I'm like, because it's me. I have to pick the hardest thing. You know, I can't like pick the easy thing, like let me make some CBDs in my community. You know, I'm gonna do that too. I'm gonna do some CBDs for my people, but really what we gotta do is move into hemp fiber for our clothing in this country, and hemp is a part of an integrated industry, right? So, this is our hemp farm. We just did a fabulous Kickstarter. A lot of you supported it. I just want to thank you. I had no idea that it would work. And we bought this Winona's hemp, and we bought a farm, and we're going to do some varietals and try to expand it out. But I just, you know, I say that quickly, but I say, like, how I know it's going to work is that the state of Minnesota had 11 hemp mills until the 1940s. The state of Minnesota had 11 hemp mills. That's a local economy, and Manitoba had about 9. And so that's my territory, and I'm like, let's grow some hemp. And there's not a single hemp mill in Minnesota, of course, you know, and we're not making a lot of clothing in this country, but I want to be on the team with y'all, you know, and that as we build the hemp economy and get that back. And I know it's possible because Minnesota had it. And I just have to put in a little pitch for like our scene here, because like the last hemp mill in Minnesota operating until the 1940s was Winona's hemp mill in Winona, Minnesota. Like, don't you feel like that should just happen again? I feel like that's gonna happen, right? If you think you have it tough, this is some vegetables grown by my sister up in Yellowknife territory, right? They don't have any topsoil. So they built green, you know, grow boxes and stuff, and they didn't have a lot to put in it. They put their compost in it and everything, and then they used caribou hair for their calcium, right? Like, that's some badass grow boxes, or what? Caribou hair. So I'm like, if you guys are like whining around one day in your garden, think about those guys up in Northwest Territory, the Dene people growing with caribou hair, okay? I'm like, if they can do it, I could do anything, right? This guy, Will Allen, you know, one of my heroes, you know, some challenges over there, but, you know, 1 million pounds on 3 acres in downtown Milwaukee. That's what a local food system looks like, you know? Turtle Island Slow Food Association, indigenous people, slow food movement since the beginning. You know, been right in there, and this, a couple years ago, we formed our first association. So, you know, support us in the creation and the support of our varieties. So, you know, just like a last couple notes. I did say, you know, pretty much just let's do it. You got that part of the lecture? Let's just do this. I think about it a lot, because if we're the 99%, you know, a couple of us are in the 1% in this room, I'm aware of that. But most of us are the 99%. If we're the 99%, let's act like it. You know what I'm saying? Like, do not sit here and be like all shaky with every crazy thing. Just dig in and do what we're doing. Be stronger at it, coalesce around DACA, coalesce around, you know, crazy ass ideas, fight them off, but just keep doing it, because we need to change the economy. We need to change the economy, and we're going to do it seed by seed and plant by plant. That's how it's going to happen, and we're going to do it by working together and sharing in that tremendous, in the tremendous gift that we have. We're going to build that. We're going to make these changes, and then we're going to remember that seeds have rights, and that the future has rights, and we're the people that are the caretakers of that. We're the people that are interested in the time of the 8th fire. That's what they call that, the time when you make the future. Let us do that together. As the great Sitting Bull said, much better, I call it the Sitting Bull plan, the plan that we are going for, the Sitting Bull plan, a great political leader. He said, let us put our minds together to see what kind of future we can make for our children. We are resistant, we are resilient, our seeds are those. This is my grandchildren and my nephews. This is who we're all doing it for, right? Those are some, I never could raise a horse riding set of children, but all my grandchildren are avid horsemen. Cool, huh? Isn't that cool? That's cool. And that's really our future. But thank you very much for your time, Miigwech. Thank you.